Now we're going to move on to part 2 of a turn. You can do part 2 of a turn if you haven't pulled a heist in part 1. You can go on to part 2 if you are successful in stealing from the discard pile and stealing gas. Or you can go on to part 2 of a turn if you decided not to do anything in part 1 of a turn and just skip right over to part 2. The first of our legal actions for part 2 is drawing 2 cards from the pile. Our second thing is that if you have done no illegal things, if you passed over section 1 of a turn and gone right to legal actions, you can take away 1 personal heat from your character. Another legal action is movement. Now the Knickknacks here have the 74 Chevy Nova, which says right on its card it has a move of 7. That means you can move 7 spaces on the board for 1/4 of a tank of gas. So they could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 if they wanted to go in that direction, or they could go south into Mexico if they wish. However, there's a border in the way, which means you have to count an extra 2 for the border. Okay, so it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then they would take down their 1/4 of a tank of gas and be on empty. If you interrupt your movement for any reason, then your movement is finished. You can't pick it up again. You could also go less than your 7 if you wished. If they wanted to just stop in Herrica Nogales, they could just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and say, that's it, we're done. 1/4 tank of gas, finished. If you're moving in a vehicle and you're going to approach the border, let's say this vehicle, starting in Phoenix, has 8 movement. Okay, so they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now that 8th one would take them part way finished a border crossing. If you can't finish a border crossing, then you can't start a border crossing. So they're going to finish their movement right there this turn, and they can continue on across the border next turn. And one last thing about moving with a vehicle, you can never bring a weapon into the USA. If you're crossing the border going north, you have to dump your weapon into the discard pile. You can take one into Mexico, just not into the US. If they wished, they also have the option of speeding in the Nova or with any vehicle. And right under move on their card, it says speeding 9. So they'd be able to go 9 spaces instead of 7 if they chose to speed. If you choose to speed, it still costs you 1/4 of a tank of gas no matter how many spaces you move. Even if you moved the 1 space and decided to stop, it still takes you 1/4 tank of gas. There is, however, a risk to speeding. You have to roll the die. If you roll a 1 when you've decided to speed, then you are caught for speeding. You're not going to get to move your speeding rate. You're going to get to move 3 spaces, which will not include a border crossing. So if they were caught for speeding, they would only be going to there. In addition to only being allowed to go 3 spaces, you also have to pay $50 to the discard pile immediately, or you can't go anywhere until you can pay that $50. You can get that $50 by picking it up with your 2-card draw, or you can sell something from your hand to get the $50, but you can't steal from the discard pile to get it because you've been stopped for speeding. In addition to only going 3 spaces and having to pay a $50 fine, you're going to have to roll against the heat on your vehicle for a cursory search. Okay, so they've got 2 heat on their vehicle. If they rolled a 2, then they're going to get searched. If you don't roll higher than your heat, then you're going to lose all of your weapons, and you're going to lose all Nuevo Pesos that you haven't stashed at home. This is the only instance where rolling a 1 isn't necessarily a fail. If you have a clean vehicle with no heat on it, you don't have to roll. Another way to move in this game is to use the train. The train connects all of the US cities together. So you can go from any US city to any other US city for $20 in seed money. It costs $20 because it's a long trip and you need beer and burritos. So if Cesar and Jorge here decide that they have a bunch of inside information in their hand that they haven't played yet, that's all towards the Gulf of Mexico, they can take the $20, put it in the discard pile, and just go to Laredo. Then they can find themselves a vehicle and they're in the right area. The downside to taking the train is you cannot bring a vehicle with you. You also can't bring an unconcealable weapon. Our last mode of transport for the game is hitchhiking. You can hitchhike one space along any of the highways, but you cannot cross a border hitchhiking. You also can't do it with an unconcealable weapon. Another one of our legal actions is buying stuff. So let's say the knickknacks here have $250 in seed money, and they want to buy both of these things from their hand. They can do that. They can buy as many things from their hand as they want, providing they have the seed money. So we have some inside information. You may say, inside information doesn't sound legal to me. Well, it's legal to buy inside information. It's not illegal to act on it. So it's $100, and they want to buy a butcher knife for $20. But they also want to buy gas. So what they're going to do is they're going to pool together all the things they want to buy, and if they buy 3/4 of a tank of gas, because the Chevy Nova says 20 for 3/4 of a tank, then it's $140. They can just spend the $150 and spend the other $10 on beer and burritos and be done with it. You can also buy and sell stuff between players. Now, you can't buy and sell stuff that's already played down on the table unless you're in the same spot on the map. But you can buy and sell stuff from your hands. So let's say that Yum Yum here really wants a weapon. The knickknacks happen to have a weapon in their hand. They have a combat knife. Now they can say, well, Yum Yum, you only have $20. We'll sell you the combat knife for $20. She can say, okay, no problem, here you go. But she has to put this in her hand because she would have to pay the price on it in order to get it into play. She can do that on her turn, or she could do that immediately if she wished. Now Yum Yum could also say, hey knickknacks, are you feeling lucky because I have an Escape a Mexican Jail card that I'm willing to sell for $50. And they can say, okay, sure, why not? They'll take that and give her the $50. The last of our legal things that you can do on a turn is to stash nuevo pesos at home. So let's say Cesar and Jorge use their last quarter tank of gas to get themselves to El Paso, and they've had a good run and they've got a bunch of nuevo peso cards. Then they just stick them under their character card to signify that they've got them home and they're safe. Once they're safe at home, you can't ever lose them. And if you're bringing home enough nuevo pesos that you've got your equivalent of $1 million US, the game ends immediately and you are the winner, even if you're speeding home after a heist. Now when it comes to buying and selling cards, buying cards out of your hand to play onto the table, and buying gas, you can do these things more than once. For example, if you've played a card out of your hand and you've bought some gas, and then you end up buying a card from another player, you could then, if you have enough cash, play that card down as well. As another example, if you buy gas and then you move in your vehicle to a Mexican city where next turn you're wanting to do a heist, you can buy gas again so you're ready for your next turn. And part 3 of a turn is that once you're done all the legal things that you want to do, you can do any of those legal things in any order you wish. Once you've done all of those things, if you happen to have more than 5 cards in your hand, you'd have to discard one. Not randomly, they'd choose. And then you're done. Now all of these phases 1, 2, and 3 are predicated on the fact that you're not starting your turn in a Mexican jail. If you start your turn and you're in a Mexican jail like Granny is here, there are a few options that you can do. The first is, if you happen to have an Escape a Mexican Jail card in your hand, then you play it, you get out of jail, and you speed away immediately. So, on to Monterey to roll for speeding. Didn't get caught for speeding, so she's in Monterey, she's escaped from Mexican jail, and she is done. That's her turn. If she didn't have an Escape a Mexican Jail card in her hand, she can try and buy one from another player. She's got $200 in seed money. Or she can try to pick one up with her 2-card draw, which isn't recommended given the odds. And again, if you're successful in finding one, then you can escape the Mexican jail, speed away, and be done. But if you take your 2 cards and you don't find one, your turn's over. Or she can get deported. If you choose to get deported, what you're going to do is you're going to directly go home to your starting city, and you're going to lose your vehicle entirely. And that's your turn. But sometimes, that's the best option. The full written rules are at www.bakshagames.com. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to contact us at the same website.